Hi, this is Michael Thompson from Zoe, and I want to welcome you to the Wednesday Morning Rescue. This is our weekly audio encouragement offered through Zoe's daily orientation. What you are about to listen to is an excerpt from the Men's Heart of a Warrior Conference or the Zoe Women's Deepening Weekend Retreat. It is our hope that your heart finds strength, beauty, and courage for the life God has called you to live in the larger story. It was C.S. Lewis who once wrote, "Relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done." It is our prayer that this devotional brings an orientation to your heart, settling you and equipping you to play your part well in the great love story set in the midst of the fierce battle. Today, may you experience the love of God, learning how to walk with Him and live free.
So Paul says there is a way, there is a disposition of the heart where we can be among the wolves and accomplish a mission. We can survive and accomplish a mission where we have strength of heart. And this verse is not going to mention the things we would typically think of, but they're very powerful, and I want to go through these. It's Ephesians 4:1 and 2, where Paul says, "I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling that you have received." Here it is. "Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love." Humility, gentleness, and patience is that heart that can handle this, that can handle well the desires of your heart. They're very powerful. They sound soft. They're not. They're very, very powerful. This is the trained heart. This is what it looks like. Okay, so let's go through these real quickly. Humility. Romans 12:3, Paul says, "Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment." This is how we typically hear it, literally, whether that's literally hear it verbally or we hear it just in our head. We hear it this way: hey, don't think of yourself as being that much, because you're not. You're not that much. That's how we tend to hear it. But the crux of the verse is what he ends with: think of yourself with sober judgment. You remember Alejandro in... well, let me start here. So when a person is intoxicated by alcohol, what are the two extremes they tend to go? Right, sad or happy. Or overly outward and obnoxious. Right, bulletproof, or the other is just kind of a depression. So it's an exaggerated sense of who they are, or a very diminished sense. I mean, it's just the way it goes. So someone who's an exaggerated sense, they think they're funnier than they really are. They think they can run faster than they really can. They think they're stronger than they really are, all those things. Or it's the pulling back, the isolating, the depression that comes on. And so Paul is saying, think of yourself with sober judgment. You see, the deal is, what he's saying here is, don't have an exaggerated sense of who you are, and don't have a diminished sense of who you are. To be humble is to have an accurate sense of who you are, and offer that. And we can be under the influence of far more than alcohol or drugs. We can be under the influence of shame, of guilt, pride, arrogance, fear. And that's where we either have an exaggerated sense of who we are or a diminished sense of who we are. And Paul says, have a sober sense of who you are, right? True humility is owning who you really are. What God has given you, you own it and you offer it. 1 Corinthians 15:10, Paul says, "But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And His grace to me was not without effect." That's true humility. I am simply, by the grace of God, who I am. Not going to diminish it. I'm not going to deny it. That's not true humility. Phillips Brooks said this, and I should have had it on a slide, but I don't, so you have to listen real carefully because it's a big one. He said, "The true way to be humble is not to stoop until you are smaller than yourself, but rather to stand at your real height against some higher nature that will show you what the real smallness of your greatness is." he's just saying, listen, don't diminish yourself. That's not going to help you be humble. Stand up, be who you are, but always stand right next to God, and the smallness of your greatness will be very clear. The only way to humility is to walk with God. It's not thinking that you don't have anything. It's none of those things. That will never bring humility in your life. It's just walking with God, putting your life next to His, and we'll understand who we really are. So, humility is essential. And part of the essential part of that is you own who you are and you offer who you are, period. The other is this. Proverbs 11:2 says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. You see, only with humility will we actually let others speak into our life, train us, mentor us. Thomas à Kempis said, seldom do they who are wise in their own conceits bear humbly under the guidance of others. See, without humility, I'm not interested in what anybody else thinks about my life or how I could have done something better or what I'm missing. But humility says, I need your eyes on my life. What do you need to tell me? And I'll take that in. I remember my boss back in Focus on the Family said to me in HR, he said, if you will humble yourself and ask people, what do you know? I'd like to learn from you. He said, eventually you will become the wisest man around because you will have gathered everyone's wisdom. But if you'll humble yourself, you'll do that. Wisdom is essential to become a warrior so that we can fall underneath the teaching of other people. The other thing, without wisdom or without humility, we can't honestly look at our own life. I mean, there is something, in a sense, humiliating, which leads to humility when I have to look at my life and see my brokenness and see what I'm not doing well. Not excuse it, but say, I don't want to be like this anymore. Only in humility can we do that in our life.
Thank you for listening to this week's Wednesday Morning Rescue, a part of Zoe's Daily Orientation. To sign up for the Daily Orientation, explore more information on Zoe's weekend retreats, or to order the book, The Heart of a Warrior, go to our website at www.zoe.org. That's www.zoweh.org.